I didn't find it to be the most tantalizing event in the history of ever in terms of setting up storyline for great fights. Yeah, go ahead. I'm a storyline guy. You guys like storylines. What kind of drama did we get from it? Look, I contended before that fight, and I'm talking about RDA versus Leon Edwards, that there was only one thing on the line. We're not make-believing this is a number one contenders fight. We're not make-believing this is an intern championship fight or a super fight or a world title. None of which it was any of those things. It's just a really great contest between two studs. Okay, great. But there was one thing on the line, which was a microphone at the end of the night to address the audience, to market, to build yourself. That's the only thing that Leon's been missing. Would like to say something. And in no means do I mean this to be condescending towards RDA, who I would never condescend to. But it has historically appeared that he is a bit of a stepping stone, which is, for some reason, is a terrible word. RDA is not a stepping stone. RDA is a straight up badass. He's a main event fighter. He's a top contender at all time. He's a former world champion. What I mean by the term is, if you will go back and look at the guys who have gotten over on him, whether it was Khabib, whether it was Kamaru, whether it was Colby, if you look at the guys who got over on RDA, something really great happened for them right after that. That was a respect that was earned. That was a guy who, if you beat, people are going to look and go, whoa, better give you a second look. And he brings in the right attention. He brings in the right eyeballs. And something good always happened to those guys. So when you look at Leon, Leon needs something good to happen to him. Leon cannot possibly prove himself to any of you. Certainly you would agree with me that he can't prove himself anymore with the punches and the kicks and the wrestling and the submission holds and the conditioning and the ability to deal with pressure and all any possible question that you have. Certainly he's answered it by now. But that doesn't mean he's going to get his opportunity. In fact, I can all but assure you he's not going to get his opportunity. In fact, I can assure you he's not going to get his opportunity. I'm talking about at a world title. He's great opportunities. Main card, co-main, going into feature and main event fight. He's moving up. But I can assure you he's not going to get his opportunity for the championship to the point that he would agree with me. Proof of that would be his call out. He did not call out a champion. He called out Masvidal. Now, nobody is currently as red hot in the sport of MMA as Jorge Masvidal. I have never seen in my life a fighter gain more pop for 5 seconds of work other than Jorge Masvidal. I would have to go back to 2009 to even make a comparison. It was the night Portland, Oregon. Nate Marquardt fought red hot Damian Maia. Nate shut him off, and I believe it was 8 seconds. If I'm wrong, it was in 9 seconds. They come across the ring, boom, Nate threw one punch and went home. And oh boy, did it ever propel him, as it rightfully should. But George is in that spot. George is in a very interesting spot right now. We've seen many guys in it before, but not guys that are this red hot. Look, Jorge Masvidal's next fight, I don't know, guys, if he's fighting for a championship or not. He's in the discussion. I can assure you he is a main event. I assure you he is a main event. In many ways, he was a main event in his last fight. I will just remind you, that night against Askren, I was there live. The whole pop around the town, the whole pop around the media, the whole pop around open workouts and everything that led into it. It wasn't about anybody other than the fight between Askren and Masvidal. So this guy's a main eventer. But it is one of those interesting questions of, but who's he going to fight? If he's going to fight for a title, as many people say he should, myself included, there's still some work that's got to be done there. Look, Colby, a world champion, is about to fight Robbie, a former world champion. We have to see that fight. If there's anything we know about MMA, it goes very fast. If there's anything we know about the Jorge Masvidal rise, meteoric is the word I'm looking for, rise to popularity, it's that things can happen really fast. So the same respect that George and Ben were paid, that has to be paid to two former title holders, and it will be. Then you got Kamaru out there waiting in the wings. Kamaru certainly has an opinion in this whole thing, up, down, or sideways. No matter how valuable, how much piece of the pie Kamaru's opinion, he gets an opinion, he gets a say. He's got a history with Colby. We got to let that fight go. Let him share his opinion. Let the fight. There's just a lot of moving parts. And we have to acknowledge how fast it goes and the recency bias that we all share. So, either way, Kamaru's not scheduled to fight until later this year. Does George want to sit that long? Can George sit that long? And we talk about recency bias, as hot as he is right now, could that cool off with somebody else's great performance? We don't have another welterweight that I think George needs to sweat and worry about cutting the line, aside from what I'm considering as a semifinal. I feel like George and Ben versus Colby and Robbie were your final four for a number one contendership. I think that we can all at least agree to that. So that fight has to play, and then becomes a question, who do you go with? Does George want to sit that long? And if not, who's he going to fight? Interesting conversation. And there's not a lot of people that check the boxes. He's got the history with Leon Edwards. That's a great fight. That works all day long, no question about it, but not just a matter of just sign off and go do it. That's just not how the business works. You have to ask yourself, if you're the promoter, can the steam gained by Leon getting over on Masvidal, will he gain enough momentum to counter the red-hot demand for George Masvidal that would be cooled off should George lose? You have to ask yourself this. You will hear the term a lot. He has to earn it. When a champion says it, it's code talk for I'm scared of that guy and I don't want to fight him, right? You will hear champions often say, well, he hasn't earned it. He hasn't earned it. Champion has no seat at the table as far as ducking and dodging anybody. Why would you not want to fight a guy that hasn't earned it? If the guy hasn't earned it, that probably means he's not very good. Go fight him. That's the guy you want to fight. You want to fight the easiest guy in the largest arena for the biggest paycheck with the least amount of skills. That's who you want to fight. So when you hear champions say it, it's always nauseating because they think they're smarter than the audience and everybody sees right through it. It's schoolyard antics. But when other people say it, such as a promoter, he has to earn it, he doesn't just mean by showing his skills. There's another side to this where he must also win over the imaginations and the demand and the creativity of the audience. I think that Leon has done himself a tremendous service in that, particularly with a win over RDA, particularly being on ESPN in front of more eyes than he's ever been in front of, and particularly the way he did the call out of Masvidal. He didn't get crazy with it. He didn't go say something silly. Oh, I'll fight anybody. Give me Daniel Cormier. What would the point of calling out Daniel Cormier be? I've heard guys do it. What would the point of that possibly be? They're not going to make that fight. And whatever messaging you think you're giving about I'm such a tough guy, I'll go take. You just wasted your time and everybody else's. It was a very good call out of Masvidal. They do have the history. Ariel Hawaiian and I get in an argument about this all the time. Ariel thinks that because Masvidal went up and gave him the 3-piece and a soda, that Leon should absolutely be given that fight and an opportunity to answer for that. I don't disagree with Ariel. I just disagreed with Ariel that they would make that fight right away. The reason was, this was a bad action that happened to be caught on camera, okay? Masvidal and Leon got into, these are two trained fighters that are fighting in a non-sanctioned event. That's very compelling theater. For sure, I get it. They clear the dugout and the pitcher and the catcher start going at it. I understand. It's good TV. That's still a bad action. That cannot be celebrated and that cannot be rewarded, at least immediately. And I will happily tell you why, in case you guys haven't connected the dots, because then that's just instantly where the sport goes. This sport is full of copycats. I don't know if we've had a guy with an autonomous thought in 15 years. I'm not fully blaming him. I don't really mind that, right? Why reinvent the wheel? If you see something working for another guy, go steal his gimmick and copy it. I get the whole thing. What I'm sharing with you is if they were given a fight, and if that was propelled to the top of the card and it came with all of the marquee and all of the fanfare and all of the money and everything that came with it, anybody who wanted to fight with anybody else is just going to go grab a camera and go sucker punch a guy. You just can't do that. You have to stop that in its track. Yeah, it would have been a great night for business. Absolutely. Would have been great from a competitive standpoint. Absolutely. Would have helped solve the rankings. I get it. You can't reward a bad act, at least not right away. You can't reward a bad act ever. That doesn't mean those two don't ever fight. That's not what I'm contending. And it doesn't even mean that you wouldn't use that footage as part of the storytelling and the promotion for the fight. It doesn't mean any of those things. But you do want to make sure that you don't send a message to the knuckleheads you've got in the back that are monkey see, monkey do, and just looking to copy the next guy in front of them, that if you want to get a match with somebody, to bring a camera along and go punch a guy. That's what I've always contended. But I think that Leon is on very good standing, and I thought that his call-out was very appropriate. I also think, unless Masvidal gets a title fight, of which he just might be exactly what he's going to do, I think it makes sense. I think Leon's got dates in his favor. I think that's one knock against Masvidal. How long does he want to be out? We do, of course, have to see the Colby-Robbie. You're then going to have all sorts of fun in the media that nobody should squash instantly. Once Robbie and Colby fight, unless it's... If that's a snooze fest and absolutely nobody wins and the crowd is booing, okay, great, go ahead and name George. But if that's a good fight, no matter which way you're going to go, you should let that marinate for a little bit. Let the Ariels and the Chaels of the world come out and debate that. Let Brendan Schaub do a piece and Joe Rogan. Let that go. Because these guys are teammates. These guys are the best of friends. These guys were roommates. I do not believe they're still roommates, but these guys are great friends. So now, all of a sudden, and they've made it very clear, very, very clear to anybody that will listen, and they'll say it right in front of each other. Neither one stabbed the other one in the back. I am here to be champion. The end. Whoever I got to go through and whatever I got to do and whoever I got to, whether I'm arguing against him or I'm fighting against him, I'm here to be champion. And that is a very compelling storyline. Colby Covington recently said, just to put in perspective for you guys, Colby Covington recently said that Robbie Lawler left the American Top Team because of a poster that was up. And I can't remember if Colby said this or if I dug into it and found it on my own, but Tyron Woodley fought Robbie Lawler for Robbie's World Championship. Tyron beat him. Tyron was also an American Top Team member. So when Tyron won, and he's got this celebration, this great moment, it was captured on film, and they blew it up into a big poster, and they hung it up at the American Top Team. As you would do when one of your guys wins a world championship. As you would do. The other side of it was, he beat another one of your guys. He beat Robbie. So Robbie saw the poster and said, I'm out of here. Great. You guys don't have to weigh your opinion on that at all. I'm actually using that to prove a further point, which is teammate versus teammate. And I don't think those two are going to have to fight. I actually don't like the feel of that myself. I don't think there's going to be a demand to see them fight, but they are going to have it out on camera. They are going to have it out in the media, on the microphone. Text messaging Dana behind the other one's back. I just got the best of him today. He skipped practice today. Whatever it could be. I think you got to let that marinate for a little bit. I think you got to let us all have some fun and then reveal where the shoe is going to drop. I think that's probably going to be Promotion 101, but once again, that takes some time. That pushes that date a little bit further out for George. Most guys, like anything in life, when you're red hot, you can only cool down. What goes up must come down. That's most guys' career, but you will see some guys who are some exceptions to that, and for reasons that are unknown, for reasons that you could not even identify. It appears that Masvidal's not going to cool down. He got all of this run. He had this surprise moment. He took out Askren, cuts the interview afterwards, and now I'm seeing more pictures of him and more interviews, and he's more in demand. He appears to be gaining, Steve. That's good for him. That's good for his argument. Anytime I'm talking about the date and the date being further out, what I'm really trying to say is a guy could cool off by then. All of a sudden, he's got to find something else to do. Other opportunities come up. Other competition comes. He just got called out on ESPN. Against the guy that he had a beef with in the back. All of these things have to be settled at some point. The other thing, how much do you want to talk about? Let's say Masvidal gets the nod. Let's say Masvidal goes into the fight. Let's say he wins. He's going to need an opponent. Maybe that's where Leon sits. Let's say Masvidal loses. He's going to need an opponent. Leon's not ready for a title fight. He goes through Masvidal. Then he's ready for a title fight. I mean, there's so many moving parts, but there's so many discussions that have to be had, and I think you can get pulled in all sorts of different directions. I think for the time being, it's important to understand is that that Leon really did it right. He went out there, he performed, he answered the question of can he do championship rounds? He answered the question of can he beat world champions? Yeah, absolutely. Can he deal with the pressure? And then he did a call out that was right. He didn't waste his time. He went after a guy who makes sense, makes absolute sense to fight. And don't forget, it's not a bad spot for Leon either way. I digress there to Masvidal. This is a good spot for Leon. Leon has a fight with Masvidal. That's going to happen. Bet your ass that's going to happen. And whether that's next or that's a year from now, they're fighting each other for sure. So it makes a lot of sense for Leon to saddle his horse to the idea that Masvidal could win the strap, which brings him right into a world title fight. It just makes sense for a lot of reasons. I don't think Leon thought this through as far as I'm carrying it out for you guys. But as far as watching a young man perform and handle his business and do everything right, he did a really good job. The second one fight ends, the marketing for the next fight begins. I had a fight. I fought a guy named Paulo Filho, and we were fighting for the WEC World Championship. And I'm beating it. Everything's going great for old Chael. And Paulo armbars me, and I submit. He taps me out. And we jump in the ring afterwards. And it was kind of a surprise because I was mauling him. It was going very, very good. At one point, the referee almost stopped it and gave it to me. And I'm just saying, I trying to paint the picture for you guys. It was going very good for me. And all of a sudden, I'm done. It's over. And he wins. So when the promoter gets in the ring, the promoter comes into the ring first. And he comes right up to me and says, the camera does not have the tap. Say you didn't tap. We're doing a rematch. Comes right up to me and tells me this. Boom. They put a camera on me. Said I did not tap. I followed the script. The marketing for the next fight had begun. Everything's cool in the gang. We set up a rematch. I had the executive commissioner of that state want to have an infraction against my license for making his referee look bad and denying a tap. And it was beyond mind-boggling that he would bring that up. Beyond mind-boggling, where a commission who exists on a 6% gross revenue of the fights, and here we are building a fight for whatever reason, factually correct, who cares, would possibly then bring something like that up. And you must understand the marketing for one fight begins the moment the other fight ends. Leon really did a good job with that.